Hey everyone, I'm HarvestBuildDestroy, and in this video I want to talk about Cavalry Archers in the Castle Age. As I was making my video on long swordsmen in the Castle Age, I noticed what I thought were some interesting similarities between swordsman line units and cavalry archers. Despite the fact that swordsmen are slow melee units and cavalry archers are fast ranged units, they suffer from some similar problems, at least in terms of when we see them used. In particular, like swordsman line units, cavalry archers require quite a few upgrades to be effective. Also like swordsmen, cavalry archers received a buff in the HD expansions, costing 10 less gold. But unlike swordsmen, cavalry archers don't cost food and can actually catch up with the units they want to kill. This got me thinking, maybe it's time to reevaluate the role of cavalry archers in the Age of Empires 2 metagame. We'll start by looking at why we see cavalry archers when we do. Cavalry archers have always been a situational unit. Throughout most of the history of the Conqueror's expansion, the main situation we would expect to see cavalry archers is from a Huns player, usually after a lengthy feudal war when the player already has a sizable economy and a number of archery ranges. The reason for this is of course the Huns bonus to cavalry archer cost, which in the Conqueror's expansion was 25%. That isn't to say that cavalry archers were never used by other civilizations in other situations, but this is the main situation where we would expect to see cavalry archers as the most probable or viable strategic option, in the same way we would expect to see crossbowmen or knights in most situations in the Castle Age. Let's start by taking a look at why crossbowmen and knights are so effective early in the Castle Age. One of the advantages of Castle Age crossbowmen is that you can train archers while you're advancing to the Castle Age. The Castle Age upgrade takes 2 minutes and 40 seconds to research, and archers take 35 seconds to train. So if you start training archers right as you click up, your 5th archer will be about halfway done when you hit castle, or your 9th and 10th if you have 2 archery ranges. In a fast castle build, you'll already have a decent sized army when you hit castle, and your army really only needs the crossbowmen and fletching upgrades to be effective, and neither is particularly expensive. Similarly, knights are effective in the early Castle Age without any upgrades at all, due to their mobility and naturally high stats. While you can't train them while you advance like archers, they're very effective in small numbers. Archer line units can do fairly well against knights in larger groups with upgrades, but knights will chop them down with ease in small numbers. This is why we sometimes see knights used as a transitionary unit. In some civilization matchups, you might see players build some number of knights early in the Castle Age to take advantage of the power spike and then transition into something else. While cavalry archers may seem to combine the mobility of knights with the range of archer line units, they also suffer from a problem similar to that faced by Castle Age longswordsmen. If you've seen my video on Castle Age longswordsmen, you may recall that one of the reasons we tend not to see swordsman line units after the early feudal age until well into the imperial age is that longswordsmen require a large number of upgrades to be effective. Cavalry archers aren't effective until they have both thumb ring and bloodlines, as well as at least fletching. This is why we don't tend to see cavalry archers off of a fast castle in standard play. Not only is thumb ring quite expensive this early in the game at 300 food and 250 wood, but you need an archery range, stable, and blacksmith to get all of these upgrades. On top of that, if you're going to make enough cavalry archers for the investment to be worthwhile, you're going to need a second archery range too. These extra buildings will delay your second town center, and you can't even stockpile cavalry archers while you advance like you can with archer line units. But why are these upgrades so important? Why are crossbowmen effective without thumb ring and knights without bloodlines, while cavalry archers need both? Well, in the case of thumb ring, it has to do with the unit's base accuracy. Archer line units have a base accuracy of 80%, while cavalry archers have an abysmal 50%. After thumb ring, these numbers both go up to 100. While archer line units' increase from 80 to 100 is good, the cavalry archers' increase from 50 to 100 is a substantial increase in its overall damage output. Also, to clarify any confusion, these numbers refer to the unit's accuracy when firing at a stationary target. Accuracy versus moving targets can only be improved by researching ballistics. The increased fire rate from thumb ring is great as well, but what really matters is fixing the cavalry archer's awful base accuracy. Bloodlines is sort of similar. The HP increase from 100 to 120 for knights is nice, but the increase from 50 to 70 for cavalry archers is massive. It's not quite as important as thumb ring, but it's still a 40% increase. If you've played StarCraft 2 before, thumb ring and bloodlines are sort of like stim and combat shields for Terran Marines. Combat shields are important, but you always get stim first. Another issue facing cavalry archers is that there just aren't many civilizations in the game who have access to all of the necessary upgrades. I would tend to argue that if your civilization doesn't have access to thumb ring, bloodlines, bracer, and either Parthian tactics or ring archer armor, you probably shouldn't be making any cavalry archers at all, at any point during the game. This only leaves us with 7 civilizations: the Huns, Indians, Japanese, Magyars, Mongols, Saracens, Turks, and Vietnamese. But what about the buffs to cavalry archer gold cost? Does this change anything? Let's crunch the numbers and see. Let's start by comparing the original cost of the cavalry archer for a generic civilization in the Conquerors with the Huns. How many villagers do we need on gold to sustain production for each? We're going to ignore the wood cost. The differences are negligible, and you generally always need 3 lumberjacks per archery range. In the Conquerors, cavalry archers cost 40 wood and 70 gold for a generic civilization, and 30 wood and 53 gold for the Huns in the Castle Age. If I crunch the numbers using the gather rate values found in Spirit of the Law's video on sustaining unit production in the Feudal Age, we find that generic civilizations require 5.77 gold miners without the gold mining upgrade and 4.92 with, while the Huns require 4.37 without the upgrade and 3.73 with. This difference is quite significant when you're making cavalry archers out of 3 or more archery ranges. So how do these numbers compare to the game's current patch? Now that the cost of cavalry archers for generic civilizations has been reduced to 40 wood and 60 gold, and the Huns bonus reduced from 25% to 10%, a Hun cavalry archer now costs 36 wood and 54 gold. So instead of 5.77 and 4.92 gold miners, a generic civilization only requires 4.95 and 4.22 respectively. This might not seem significant at first glance, but I would argue that it is. Bearing in mind that we always need to round these numbers up, the end result is that in the Conquerors, a generic civilization required 12 gold miners to sustain 2 archery ranges without gold mining and 10 with gold mining, while now it's only 10 without gold mining and 9 with. After the change, you could argue that gold mining probably won't be worth the investment until you have the economy to support 3 archery ranges, so you can use the extra food and wood to go towards an earlier thumb ring. These numbers stack up quite a bit more favorably than before in comparison to knights and crossbowmen too. In fact, cavalry archers aren't that much more expensive than crossbowmen anymore. Crossbowmen take about 2 lumberjacks and 3.5 gold miners to sustain, versus 3 lumberjacks and 5 gold miners for the cavalry archer. This stacks up well versus the 6 to 7 farmers and 7 gold miners required to sustain knights from one stable, although, as mentioned before, knights are more effective in small numbers without upgrades. So how can we take advantage of this? I think there are a few ways that we could alter standard playstyles to make use of Castle Age cavalry archers in a way that could end up being viable. As the pocket player in a team game, a standard naked fast castle into cavalry archers could be quite effective, particularly for the Huns, Mongols, or Vietnamese. The idea would be to click up with an archery range and blacksmith and make a second archery range while you advance. Research thumb ring a minute or 2 into the Castle Age when you move out with your first group of cavalry archers. Take advantage of the mobility of your units to give yourself map control while you research the upgrades necessary for a more direct attack, sort of like with a Drush Fast Castle. Speaking of which, the Drush Fast Castle would be a good way to open if you want to use cavalry archers as the flank player or in a 1v1. For this as well, I would recommend the Huns, Mongols, or Vietnamese. In addition to having cheaper cavalry archers, the Huns' house bonus is arguably the best bonus in the game. The Mongols can fast castle much more easily with their hunting bonus, and when you hit castle, your cavalry archers fire faster. Vietnamese cavalry archers have 15% more HP in the Castle Age, allowing you to hit harder and faster. Another way to use cavalry archers early in the Castle Age would be to open with a scout rush into a semi-fast castle. Click up at 22 population, make 4 or 5 scouts, and harass your opponent. Pick up wheelbarrow relatively early, get to the Castle Age as quickly as you can, and transition into cavalry archers. If your scout rush is going well, pick up Bloodlines. You'll be glad to have it when you hit castle. Although this type of build could work with the Huns, Mongols, or Vietnamese as well, I would also suggest the Magyars and the Turks. With cheaper scouts and free forging, a Magyar scout rush is not only more of a threat, it won't delay your castle time as much. If you have a decent handful of scouts left over when you hit castle, you might want to research the light cavalry upgrade, since your scouts will get iron casting for free anyway. If you opt to continue investing into cavalry archers into the Imperial Age, you can pick up the Magyar's unique technology recurve bow for an additional 1 attack and range. While the Turks don't have any significant bonuses in the Feudal Age, any scouts you have left over will automatically upgrade to light cavalry when you hit castle, making it that much easier to move out with a smaller number of cavalry archers. And when you can afford to build a castle, you'll have access to the Turks' Castle Age unique technology Sipahi, bringing your cavalry archer's HP up to 90 if you already have Bloodlines. For reference, that's enough HP that your cavalry archers can eat 2 mangonel shots to the face and stay on their horses. Anyway, the point I'm trying to get at is that the change to the cost of cavalry archers seems fairly significant, and players should be experimenting with this unit more, even if there aren't many civilizations that have access to all the necessary upgrades to try and make this work. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider rating, commenting, and subscribing. See you soon.